A full-frame cinelens that can fit in the palm of your hand? The Simera-C can't do that, literally. And there's a whole set of them. Must be slow, right? On the contrary, these lenses are very fast with a T1.5 aperture for all focal length. And that opens a lot of interesting use cases whenever size, weight and lens speed is of interest. For use on gimbals, Steadicams and Gyros, for handheld shooting, to use in narrow spaces, or maybe on helmet and body mounts, for low-profile work, when traveling, or even to use on crash cams. All that without sacrificing speed and features like focus and iris gears with unified positions throughout the set, internal focus and longer focus throw with hard stops. If you are as intrigued about the features as we were when we heard about the Simera-C, stick around. We are going to test them and try some interesting rigging for a short Roadkill that is shot exclusively at T1.5. We also used them on a real-world job filming a studio session with the Tennessee Kids. Besides being stars in their own right, they're a touring band of Justin Timberlake with their own Netflix doc. And filming them while writing and recording a track is an amazing experience beyond just enjoying cool new lenses, so why don't we just enjoy both at the same time? Get some popcorn, I'll give you 8 seconds of intro. I love cine lenses. Their usability really makes it so much easier to get the shot that you need. This comes at the price of added weight. Metal build, heavy mounts, gearing. Most cine lenses are much heavier than photo lenses. Oftentimes I find myself shooting with fast cinema-modded vintage lenses because of their compact nature. Especially when I have a long day of handheld shooting ahead of me. And then missing things like longer focus throw and high speed. This is a contact size 35mm f1.4 and it's a great lens, except for a very short focus throw. And this is a Simera-C that is also f1.4. And even though it is a cine lens, it is considerably smaller and lighter than the contact size. And that is interesting. The Simera-C are ultra-compact cine lenses designed for full frame. There are 5 focal lengths that make a pretty decent set. There's a 28mm, a 35mm, a 50mm and a 75mm, and there will be a 21mm that should be out by the end of the year. Let's do a quick run through the specs. The Simera-C are truly small, light and have a full metal construction using aerospace-grade aluminum alloy for high strength, weighing 398 to 450 grams. All focal lengths are super speeds with aspherical optical design and T1.5 maximum aperture that closes down to T16. Focus and iris are geared of course, and the focus throw is 210 degrees for all lenses. Scales are metric and imperial at the same time. Front diameter is 67mm for all focal length except for the 75mm that needs a bit more with 72mm. 16 rounded iris blades promise smooth, round bokeh. For the start there will only be a E-mount version. M, RF, L might come depending on demand. No PL, no EF, and there's a good reason for that. Long flange doesn't allow for such compact lens design, still offering the impressive speed that makes the Simera so tasty. Leica M would be great and is adaptable to most short flange systems, so it offers some interchangeability. These lenses are designed for a market that doesn't have many options at this time. The Zeiss Nano Primes and the Cooke SP3 come to mind. Both those are compact and are specifically designed for short flange systems with no PL options. The difference is that the Simera-C are way lighter and compact compared to the Zeiss Nano Primes and way faster than the Cooke SP3. If you think of the Nisi Athena as comparable, they weigh around double what the Simera-C weigh, even in the E-mount version. And they are stopped slower. Lenses that are even close in speed and weight, like the Zero Nightwalker, are limited to Super 35 format. The only thing on the market that can compete in size and weight are the Leica M08, and that are basically cinema-modded Samilux M, which has its own problems, like a 90 degrees focus furrow. Besides the Leica tax, of course. One Leica M08 is around $10,000. And even when you cinemod a photo M yourself, those are around $6,000 per lens, and your modding might lower the resale value. Notably, there are two Cine features that the Simera-C don't offer. First, the front diameter differs in the set. The 75mm has a slightly larger front element, but that makes total sense if you build a set as compact as possible. And they are not corrected for breathing, which is still moderate, as you will see in our test. The price per focal length is surprisingly affordable in the Cine realm. A single lens costs $879, and a set of 4 will be available with a discount of $3,169. If you are working exclusively in the filmmaker realm, you might think, who is Typoch? And why would I buy lenses from such an unknown company that sounds like something you find in Asian cuisine? The answer is, it is DZO film. DZO produces the popular Vespid primes. Here is a Cyber Prime that is basically a Vespid prime with advanced lens control features. DZO also produces a variety of zooms like the Cutter Ace zooms, parfocal full-frame cinezooms that performed very well in our test. If you are interested in those or zooms for filmmakers in general, link is in the corner. We are surely in love with the DZO Pavo lineup of compact 2x anamorphic primes. We have an extensive test episode on those, and we also used the Pavo lenses in our masterclass episode recreating the Paris hit of David Fincher's The Killer. DZO recently released the Alles primes, full-frame super-speed cine primes that got stellar reviews and that are huge. Having gained a name for creating innovative, high-quality lenses for the filmmaking industry, why on earth did they choose to release the Simera-C under the Typoch brand? Well, that is because the Simera have been on the market under the Typoch brand for a while, just as photography versions. The photo versions of the Simera-C are much more affordable alternatives to the Leica Samilux, and at least the 35mm share a quite similar design. I don't know if it's fair to call the Simera-C Leica clones. A bit of a vintage design and some features like a mechanical depth of field indicator make the tiny Simera a quite charming lens, especially for street photography. There are many reviews of the Photo Simeras online where you can see direct comparisons to the Leica and the usual talk about edge-to-edge sharpness. Are the Leicas sharper? Yes, they better be for 5 times the price, but not in a meaningful way. Sharpness is important for huge prints of photos and almost counterproductive for filmmaking in an array of contexts, but I will leave the judgment of that to your taste, needs and your budget, of course. There might be other consideration to keep the Simera-C under the Typoch brand as well. Maybe they don't want to overcrowd the DZO Prime offerings that already have the Vespids, the Cybers, the Gnosis and the new Alles. What is important here is that you can expect the same quality from a Typoch lens that you can expect from a DZO lens. Full disclaimer, Typoch sent us these free of charge to make a test for you. We had them for a while, and this was basically the first finalized set to leave the factory. For transparency reasons, this episode is marketed as a paid promotion. As always, we are not obligated to glorify Typoch or the Simera-C. We show you what they can do from our perspective and our experience, so you can build an informed opinion. If you are interested in our subjective opinion, we have a verdict at the end of the episode. Before we go into the interesting stuff, let us begin by giving you a quick technical basis for all that comes after. Context will show you how fast the Simera-C really are and what that means for depth of field. This is shot in full frame open gate, so you can see if there's any fall off or vignetting worth mentioning. Like we mentioned, and as you may have noticed, the Simera-C do not compensate focus breathing. How important that is really depends on context and your taste. Being used to vintage glass, we don't find it troubling. Testing lenses is always, well, let's face it, it's boring to do the coverage, the breathing, the sharpness, the fall off, the flaring in a studio setup. And you will not see us filming lens charts, simply as it's so far away from what really matters. What we really wanted to know was, are the Simera-C the right choice to film a narrative? After all, that's what cinelenses are all about. We wanted to find out in an environment that really challenges the practical and visual qualities of the Simera-C. Can they look cinematic? After our initial tests, we had no doubt that the Simera-C would perform great in very dim environments, so we decided to shoot a short film that plays at night with a bit of an edgy theme. The result is Roadkill. It is only 2.5 minutes long. Let's watch it, we talk about our experiences and explain some of the shorts afterwards.
It's all in the love. It's all in the love. Baby, when you're feeling down, just get on up. It's all in the love. It's all in the love. Oh, baby, when you're feeling down, just get on up. Just get on up. Just get on up. Oh, it's all in the love.
I hope you like that one. For music enthusiasts and fans of filmmaker Jonathan Glazer, maybe you already guessed that the inspiration for the short was Karma Police by Radiohead. I'm also a great fan of the photographer Gregory Kreetzen and his very theatrical approach of telling a story in just one photo, sometimes more powerful than a whole feature. I often find myself trying to look through the lens with his mindset and hope that there's a little of that in Roadkill. My old friend Guido has a beautiful old Ford Mustang and is really a character just by itself. Just too good to not use it in one of our projects. Guido also played our driver. Makes sense, nobody else could have handled that sexy beast. Of course you would want to see it driving, and that requires your whole rig and team to travel along. Not a simple task with a story you wanted to tell, and especially not easy if your whole crew is just Morty and myself. We used the Simera-C with our high-end Kinefinity Marvel F Cinecam on a DJI RS4 gimbal. A bit of gyro control magic using the DJI transmission will help us with some of the shots. We also used a super light Sony FX3 setup mounted directly to the Mustang with suction cups. On the windshield, like you see here, but turned around to get the driver. And on the door in this one, and on the trunk in this shot. With a simple rigid car mount like this, vibrations will translate into the camera, and there's a lot of vibrations with an old V8 engine, but I think those suit the story quite well in our context. It also helped to get this while the driver is in his seat. We don't have to sacrifice image quality that comes with high ISO. And T1.5 is enough to stay around 800 ISO even if the scene is primarily lit by streetlights and the headlights of the car. The Simera-C stays sharp wide open and don't introduce the highlights blooming you're used from vintage lenses. They stay so sharp that we decided to reduce the resolution with the dehancer film emulation we used in post. As this is a lens test, the scenes you see in this part just have the grade but not the film grain or added softness you see in the short itself. This is as sharp as the Simera get at T1.5. The problem with the narrow depth of field at T1.5 is the focus, and we opted to utilize the DJI Focus Pro with mixed results. Sometimes the system can't decide what to focus on, car or human, and in this configuration it is hard to lock on a subject. Also, in the bright headlights the Focus Pro tends to lose focus. Pulling focus is the answer in these cases. In the scenes that played in favor of the Focus Pro, it worked really well. We have a deep dive episode on the DJI Focus Pro where you follow Nick and Morty on their quest to find a focus of the future. Check it out if you're interested in the system. Talking about Morty, he was also one of the killers in our remaster episode, and he is doubling as a focus puller, gyro head controller and as a mobile light that will help us to bring some shape and fill in some shadows. You never looked better. As always, check out Morty's channel, Morty Films, link is in the corner. An FX3 with the Simera-C is so light that it can do things you just can't pull off with heavier rigs, like for example a Snorri-cam setup. Our runner was played by Max Heinemann. If you've been around this channel, you might recognize his face from our f0.3, the Impossible Lens episode, where he ventured through very shallow depth of field into very deep water. And from our DZO Pavo test episode, where we had him descend into limbo. We didn't end up using the Snorri cam shots in the short, but it's great to have such an option in the toolkit. While it is great to have a light lens on a light camera, it is even better that the Simera-C allows us to have heavier cameras without breaking your arm and back. All gimbal shots are made with a gimbal attached to a boom pole. That will allow you to get jib and crane style shots. Kind of. Of course you can see that the gimbal shots are really not perfect, but given the relatively simple setup, short time and restrictions that come with a no-budget shoot, we have to live with those. Fighting against the sun going down means of course that continuity is not always right. But hey, I still think it works for us by suggesting that the hunt goes on much longer than what you see in the film. The flares are not too expressive, but at T1.5 with the headlights hitting the lens, you surely get some. Overall, the Simera-C flares are quite cool in this context. Wide open, the Simera-C often shows something that I would like to call bleeding flares, like you see it here, or here, or here. Not ugly at all, but as you don't see them coming, they can be counterproductive. We will go a little bit more into this in our verdict. You might have noticed that we have just a few shots with the 50mm and none with the 75mm in Roadkill, simply because there was so little opportunity to use tight framing in the narrative. Don't worry, we will use them more in the next segment. My favorite focal length seems to be 35mm, as I tend to use that the most, but as always, the right lens for the right context. Just because I know some of you will ask, let's do a quick run through the VFX shots, and there is basically just 3. I will not bore you with the speedometer, that is just a handheld camera shot with a reverse stabilization and an edit indicator. The car hit is also very simple. You can't do this in a layered shot with a combined background, car and victim plates because the headlights interact with the victim and the background. Also, I find the classic run over in After Effects a bit cheesy. We simply shoot the car approaching and stopping in front of Max, while he was doing his acting in slow motion. In post, we gave the shot a speed ramp to compensate the slowing. and a lot of added motion blur suggesting that the car is very fast. And that's all. And here we have the broken car, which is actually the same shot we used earlier when the car was reversing. We generate some of the damage with generated fill in Photoshop and did some good old-fashioned retouching to make those look believable. Attaching the 2D still to motion tracking of the slightly moving car and the added fog makes the whole thing believable. We also made the sky darker to fit the surrounding shots. I really think that this shoot shows you that you can get away with simple and affordable gear while still getting a quite professional and cinematic result. Of course, we used very decent equipment depending on your level, but even with much simpler tools we could have gotten close. It is a sliding scale with diminishing results. I'm just saying that to motivate you to go out and shoot, because the most important ingredient to create a good film is you and your experience. The Simera-C are not Leica M08, but they can get you results that are close enough, and that at a fraction of the cost and with a better usability, like a longer focus throw. Could you have done all that with a kit lens and PDAF? Well, the high ISO required with a slower lens really starts to kill the image quality at a point, and also kills the highlights roll-off. The shots that required focus pulls are even harder to pull off. How about some fast cinema-modded vintage lenses? Sure, but you would have had a hard time to focus, and in situations like the one we had, every second counts. One of the golden rules of the media division is that we don't present gear or services that we don't use and like ourselves. So we're very happy to have the opportunity to use the Simera-C beyond our short film in a real-world documentary context. As we teased in the intro, we filmed a studio session with the Tennessee Kids, and if you should be unfamiliar with that name, the Tennessee Kids are Justin Timberlake's band. Academy Award-winning filmmaker Jonathan Demme, who also directed classics like The Silence of the Lambs, made the documentary Justin Timberlake and the Tennessee Kids about their 2016 tour. It is available on Netflix. If you're interested, check it out. All members of the Tennessee Kids are world-class musicians, and I was blessed to capture a recording session with them in the Mel Studios, a day before their 2024 tour with Justin Timberlake had their gig in Hamburg, Germany. What made that session so special was that the Tennessee Kids had no concept or idea for a song when they came into the studio. That means we were able to capture the whole process of the birth of a song, from the inception to developing the ideas and themes, write lyrics and the music, right up to recording and mixing. The whole session lasted only 4 hours, which was just unreal. You might have noticed that I didn't mention rehearsal in that process because they just didn't really rehearse. Recording the music was basically one take. This is how good they are. And this is also a major problem if you want to film it with one camera. To give you a bit of context, Mel Studios are very small, consisting of the main recording room and the room for the engineers that was also used for vocal recordings in this session. The Tennessee Kids came with 12 musicians. Mel themselves had 2 studio engineers and their intern, and me bouncing around with my gear. To put that in one word, crowded. Light your scene? Not in this context. The intrusive nature of deliberately lighting and the lack of space for such a crowded setting demands you to use the light that is available. Of course, one could always bump up the ISO, but how would that have looked in the end? Boring, flat, uninspiring. My vision for the result was something very different, something with a vintage character that suits the character of the Mel Studio with all his vintage equipment and, more importantly, the soulful music and personalities of the Tennessee Kids. To achieve the needed flexibility, mobility and dreamy look while getting enough exposure, I decided to shoot everything handheld, fully manual and almost exclusively with T1.5. I used my preferred camera for handheld filming in this style, the Kinefinity Mavo LF Mark II. This setup allows to use a large monitor that you really need when you shoot at a constant T1.5 and you can balance the rig in your hand while operating the follow focus. Everything has an inherent stability through weight. The Typoch Simera-C are the perfect companion in this scenario. They don't add much weight and they don't require me to counterbalance my rig. Focus at T1.5 is a challenge in this scenario. The depth of field is razor thin, especially in close-ups, but it is exactly the dreamy look that we were after here. Autofocus is not the right tool here. PDAF or solutions like the DJI Focus Pro are great to stick the focus to a face, body or a car, but we tell the story using the focus with long pulls that guides the eyes of the audience. Many performances we see in the video are the actual performances that you can hear in the final mixdown, like when Dante plays the outro on the Minimoog. Movement, focus, framing, all has to be right without me knowing what Dante will do next. Usually, I wouldn't have dared to shoot this fast or with focal length above 35mm using Cine lenses. The weight, imbalance and the smaller field of view of longer focal length without support makes close-ups very hard to hold over prolonged time. The long focus throw will also limit the range in which you can effectively pull focus in one go. Not so with the Simera-C. Even the 75mm is so light that you can really hold the camera and do moves away from the hip without starting to introduce a wiggle a second in. The whole video is 8 minutes long and I don't want to talk over the music and dialogue, so we'll put it in a separate video you can watch as a standalone video. Link is in the corner. The joy and expertise that the Tennessee kids bring to the studio is really worth a watch. The Simera-C are super practical, there's no doubt about it. For that reason alone, we will use them a lot in the future. The low weight doesn't only improve your shots directly by putting less strain on you, they also make carrying your gear to set and traveling, especially on airplanes, much more convenient. Close focus is not bad, but not stellar. I miss the capabilities of the 35mm Canon FD concave that almost doubles as a macro. As you saw in the session video, it doesn't really limit you in the way that some zooms do. From the practical to the image is quite controlled. Curvature, fall-off, aberration, there is little of all that. The image is clean, but not sterile. These lenses don't bite too much, which gives them a nice smooth cinematic feel. The Simera-C stay absolutely usable and relatively sharp at the maximum aperture. The highlights don't glow wide open like is so common in vintage lenses. You don't have to close down to sharpen up, at least in a narrative context. For tabletop and interviews, I would definitely close down a bit. Now from the factual to the subjective. I would describe the Simera-C as largely transparent lenses that don't add too much character to your image, besides the ability to deliver a really shallow depth of field, of course. They don't flare with a lot of character or have any other significant traits that would alter the image. That can be a good thing if you are going for that. Just don't expect the wonky look of some vintage lenses. If you want that, go for vintage lenses. Let us talk about the flares a bit. Like mentioned, the Simera-C flare in certain angles and with direct light right out of the frame. I would call that bleeding flares. These seem to be typical for the coatings that DZO uses, as I experienced the same flares with the Cutter Ace zooms. I talked with Typoch about those and it's not clear what causes them. There might be some interaction with the OLPF of the Marvo, but I also noticed them on the FX3. Again, not ugly, just good to know. With direct light you can have a bit of a rainbow fringing in the flares. I am not bothered by them, but they don't have the charm that the flares or something like the old Canon FD have. Still, they can look absolutely cool in a narrative context. Do I like the image of the Simera-C? Yes, I do. There are great multi-purpose lenses, and if I could have only one set of lenses with me, the Simera-C would probably be it. For practical reasons and because they don't introduce a specific look that might be wrong for a given situation. If you have a very specific vision of a look, choose your lens accordingly. Vintage, anamorphic, you're the master of your destiny. I hope that Typoch adds a macro in the future, because you have to carry an alternative if you want to really get something like just an eye. The media division would like to thank all the partners of this episode. Thank you for Morty for shooting our short Roadkill with us. You are a beacon of light for us, literally. Check out his channel, Morty Films. Thank you, Guido, for playing with us and letting us use and abuse your old Mustang. Thank you, Max Heinemann, for being our protagonist one more time. This is becoming a habit. Finally, we got to kill your character. Thank you so much to the Tennessee Kids and Mel Studios for letting us be a part of the recording session. It was a fantastic experience. Thank you to Typoch for all the trust that comes with such a project and sending us lenses before the official release. If you have an interesting product or service for professional filmmakers and you want to see us use it on the channel, let's talk. Our business email is in the description. Episodes like this are only possible with the help of our members, and we are honored and grateful for all the love and support we get from you. Thank you so much. The division salutes you. Leave us a like if you think that we deserve one, and I hope to see you next time. We got a lot of interesting things coming up soon. Until then, my name is Nicholas, signing out with nerdlicious wishes. Shoot something amazing.